Yes, that's exactly what happened. Incredibly difficult. I had sent a text to my colleague and friend, good friend Corkie, and we've been working on a project together, and he didn't respond for a couple days, and so I sent again my text, and shortly after that a text came back informing me that Corkie had died. Unbelievable. That's exactly what happened. My good friend Corkie had died. Massive stroke had taken him down. Well, obviously there's some stories there, and there's some sweet stories and perhaps not so sweet, but certainly a challenge as to what we can do and what we should be about as Christian entrepreneurs. Give me about 10, 12 minutes, maybe a little bit more, to talk a little bit about Corkie and what he means to me and what his life and his message could mean to all of us as entrepreneurs in the world today of 2020. That's coming up right now. Hi, this is Stan Houston, and this is The Master Entrepreneur, a program brought to you, a iPod radio broadcast, and we are now helping many of you to join me in the growing community of business owners and leaders who are creating their own podcast for their own personal presentation performing and for being able to promote their business, their ministry, their church, their organization, and the good that they can do, and to inform their colleagues, their clients, their customers, their donors, and their sponsors. This is the media of the 21st century, and in 2020, you're going to have to make some decisions about what you will do about this growing phenomenon. That's right, we sometimes call it a podcast. We simply put it this way. It is a individual, personal, on-demand iPod radio broadcast in which you speak your truth, your message to others, and they can listen to it anywhere, anytime they please, on any device they please. It's personal and it's on demand. That's what this is all about, and I'm going to help you be about it in 2020. And one of the persons who was really encouraging to me was a gentleman, Dr. Cornell Haan. That's right, Dr. Cornell Haan. And we just knew him as Corkie. And he was always bright, and he was busy, and he was in his 70s, and he said, I'll never retire. I'm having way too much fun, and this is some of the best years of my life. About a year and a half ago, he had a minor stroke, which was a little bit scary, but he recovered fine and was going on and doing well. And I oftentimes asked him how he was, and he said, I'm just great. However, I had sent that text, and what had happened is, again, nothing had happened, and he was usually pretty thorough about that, so I was a little concerned. So I sent it again, he could have been. And of all things, the text came back, and it was from his wife, Ginger. And she had informed me on the return text that Corkie, that's right, Corkie, had had a massive stroke and never regained consciousness and had passed away just a day or two before. That's what happened to me last week. Just as I was completing my last program on Thursday from this venue at Studio 77. Now, I'd like to talk about that just very briefly, partly as a tribute to Corkie, and perhaps what it could mean for all of us, because he would want that it would give meaning to all of us. That's the kind of guy he was. Now, his story was that he was raised in Chicago, Illinois. His father was, as he said, he was an old Dutch guy. He was an old Dutch businessman and very successful, primarily in the construction business, and had done very well. And he said, I grew up knowing that, boy, you had to work hard in life, and you had to build your own business, and you had to make it go. and that was a part of my upbringing. However, as a young man, he felt that he had been called into pastoral ministry, and he had pursued that path. His father wasn't too keen about that idea, but of course, he let him do. After all, he's his own man, and let him choose what he does. He went to seminary, graduated from seminary, and received a call to a church. And again, his father was not quite sure that that was a good idea, but he was certainly going to honor his son, who had done well. And he said to him, "Corkie, how are you going to make any money now as a pastor?" And Corkie said, "I told Dad," he smiles, well, Dad, when I pastor a church, they'll pay me a salary for being the pastor of the church." And then he said, his father kind of humphed and said, "Son, I didn't ask you how you were going to make a living. I asked you how you're going to make some money." And maybe you get it. And his point was that if you want to make some money, you just can't work for somebody else. You got to have businesses and enterprises and enterprises inside, outside, all around. And so right off the bat, Corkie realized that it would please his father, and perhaps it'd be good for what God is calling him to, that not only would he seek to serve his church well, but he would set up small little enterprises that would not conflict with his ministry, but would certainly give him freedom and the enhancement of his ministry. And as he said, "I read about a guy named St. Paul, and it seemed like he was a fairly successful businessman at the same time that he was doing his ministry and mission." And of course, that's another story, which leads us to a program we will do for you called St. Paul Entrepreneur, or Saint Entrepreneur. And not only was he a theologian, a pastor, and a missionary, he was an entrepreneur, a very successful business owner and leader. And we can give you that story someday. Well, Corkie did that, but his heart was in other things besides small businesses, and so he decided to establish many small social and religious ministries that he thought were important, particularly ones about prayer and the care for others. And so what he would do is, with his incredible energy and talent and organization and fundraising abilities, he would start a ministry or an organization for a specific cause, bring it to a certain entrepreneurial level, and then he would find another person to take it over from there after he had founded it and established it, and somebody else would organize it and sustain it. And that was his life. He enjoyed it, and he was very good at it. One of the premier successes that he had was, and you may recall the film The Passion of Christ, the huge, powerful film done by a rather roguish character named Mel Gibson. But it was really a Christ-honoring film, and Hollywood didn't like it. They didn't want to promote that kind of film. And so it became very clear to the leaders of the film that they would not be able to count on the marketing prowess of the Hollywood marketing machine. That's when Corkie was contacted, and he simply said, "We will promote it through the people of God, not through the icons of Hollywood. And through the churches and organizations, the film was promoted, and discounts and free admissions were offered to many." And of course, you know the rest of the story. The film went off to be a smashing success. And I know that Corkie was thinking about that perhaps there would be some sequels to The Passion of Christ, maybe about the resurrection and the ascension. But Corkie has left us, and he is now enjoying fully the presence of the master entrepreneur that he served so well. Corkie was also one who taught me about what he called being a kingdom entrepreneur. He was very much committed that what all Christians should be about is finding ways to create economic value in the marketplace, in the ministry marketplace. Be a creator. Be an entrepreneur. Be a kingdom entrepreneur. Let's flood the world with men and women, followers of the Lord Jesus, who know how to build a ministry enterprise, know how to build a commercial and marketplace enterprise, and in effect, we will be able to fund and build projects and do ministry, not just through donation seeking, and not just through asking other people, but we will be able to raise up the revenue and the margins we need for the mission that God has called us to. That's what Corkie was all about. And I miss him. I really miss him. He was always full of energy. He had brightness all the time, new ideas. He was even pursuing a project in the 5G category at the time of his death. He knew all about that stuff, was kept well informed of that stuff, and was always in communication with the men and women who were leaders not only in business and ministry, but in the technology that was coming about. An incredible Renaissance man. Life had not always been easy for him, and we'll tell you about that, and then we'll finish our story. Once again, I'm Stan Houston. We'd appreciate your help and sponsorship. This is the giving season, and we could use your giving a sponsorship. That's what we want. I'm Stan. Reach me at stanhouston@gmail.com, stanhouston@gmail.com, and tell me if I can help you. And then perhaps I'll ask maybe you to help me. Or go to tcenglobal.org/contribute now, tcenglobal.org/contribute now. We'll finish the story and then ask you to start to continue to create your story. That's coming up. This is the Master Entrepreneur.
He careth for you. He careth for you. When the worries and cares of your life seem to block out the rays of His light, never forget, never lose sight, for He careth for you, for He careth for you.
Every time I got a text or an email from Corkie, he always signed off by saying, "Keep praying. Keep praying. Remember, Stan, keep praying." One time I asked him about that, and he said, "Stan, I think you might know that my wife, my first wife, died a very, very difficult death through cancer. Obviously, broke my heart, almost broke my life. And we suffered through that, and the only way I got through it or even began to recover from it was I just kept praying. I just kept praying all the time. And after I lost her, I thought that God had left me, but I kept praying, not knowing that He would restore to me a wonderful woman named Ginger, and we've been able to enjoy life, both in our second time around, as it seems, and we have had a wonderful and wonderful life together. And I salute Ginger, who survives him, and their families together. So Corkie was that kind of a guy, and again, always full of creative energy. But here's the thing that I learned from him particularly. You know, if you're an entrepreneur, a lot of your friends will die. And here's why. Because if God gives you the entrepreneurial heart and spirit, you'll have lots of friends. I mean, it's not just the people in your industry or your local church, but you've got clients and you've got customers and you've got vendors and you've got suppliers. And what can happen is that the person who spends 30 years in a career in one company, that's kind of the limit of some of their encounters and their experiences. But to be an entrepreneur is to cultivate not just customers and clients and colleagues, but to do as Jesus said, I now call you friends. And Corkie had hundreds, probably thousands of people who would call him a friend. And he was always busy because friends were always recommending Corkie to others. And he would gain more friends and more influence and more ability to prosper and to share that prosperity with others. If you do this right, God will indeed give us more friends. And of course, as a result, they will have their time and they will pass on. And as one of my friends who's been very successful in business and is now fully retired, though of course he didn't retire at all. He's like Corkie. He's keeping going. He just said to me one time, he said, Stan, it seems that right now we're going through a time where I've got a number of funerals I have to attend for dear friends. Just kind of one of those times. And that can happen, and it perhaps will happen. But that's good news, that God can take the bad of death to help us understand that we have been blessed with many people. And of course, if we love and care for, we will also, as I'm doing for Corkie, mourn for. I'm Stan Houston. This is the Master Entrepreneur. Thank you again for your time. We're going to be really busy, and so are you. 2020, about 7 weeks away. We've got lots to do. I'm going to request your help. We, at this time, have many opportunities and many things we can do to help you in your business, but we are at a time where we need some help with sponsorship. And we would be grateful if you would help sponsor us, particularly through these next 2 or 3 months as we make some major investments and transitions and just have to keep things going. We invest ourselves in a variety of things to help the ministry and help the organization. And if you could do that for us, again, I would be grateful. Best and blessings. Monday met the marketplace. I hope it went well for you, and that this week will be one where you will have friends and you will have good fortune, and that you will have some real wisdom, you'll have some real courage, and you'll be able to share kindness with others, just like Corkie did. Bye for now.